Hello, LinkedIn, Twitch, Periscope, and of course, YouTube, but mostly LinkedIn. No, just kidding. I love all the platforms equally. My name is Frank Lavinia, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Frank Diggs Data. So, the title of this stream is basically Now is the Time to Prepare for the Quantum Revolution. I couldn't agree more. I actually came across this story here on Tech Republic. Really great interview with, hey, I see you have a chat issue. Yes, Mr. Roldan, I do have a new job indeed. I joined Coverse, and they are a big data platform that handles ingestion at scale and speed of structured and unstructured data. I'll have more to say. Uh, I'll have more to say about that as time goes on, but thank you for noticing. I am really excited. I am super excited to be part of this team. There's some really impactful work that we are doing at Coverse. I can't talk about at the moment, but I will say it is very impactful. So thank you for noticing that, and thank you for watching. I think Alberto, you and I talked about having you on the show to talk about quantum computers. So definitely going to follow up with you on that because um, not it was surely a coincidence in the sense that I saw this, but I am relaunching the Impact Quantum website. So it's not going to be just a podcast anymore. If you went to impactquantum.com, it would go to the podcast feed. But I am actually relaunching it as its own site. Right now, it shows that it's affiliated with Frank's World. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's the key here. And basically, one of the bits of feedback that I got was that on Frank's World, a lot of stuff, which has also been redesigned, and is that there's a lot of content around quantum computing. And not that that's a bad thing, but folks come to Frank's World for data and AI type stuff. So I decided that it is probably best to kind of launch a second website. Now, part and parcel of that was what's really enabled this is that I built out a new tool for basically kind of like a meta content management system, if you will. Um, I had kind of the parts and pieces of this done in Power Apps and Power Automate Desktop, but I actually have now a command line tool where I can kind of find bits of content I like and then push that. Actually, now I last night I made it so now that I have more than one site, I actually have to push it in multiple places. And there's actually another site. Actually, let me go see if I can put this here. Impact Quantum, and it's at. How's everyone's day going so far? Caption. Let's show it here. So if you want to play along at home, you'll see there's definitely some rough edges on the website. The contact form doesn't work yet, but it will take you to, if you go here, this will take you to where you can listen to this on Apple Podcasts and also Spotify. And I'm going to add a bunch more as things go. But I just wanted to kind of announce formally that the launch of Impact Quantum. I say that 10 times fast. But basically, that's kind of the plan here. And already have a number of, I'm not calling it a blog so much, it's really a news site. I'm just going to find all the stuff that's kind of newsworthy here. I was able to basically build out this content in no small part because of this tool that I've built. And if anyone's interested in a demo of that, I will show that. Yes, it is definitely a new toy. I actually have another site that I use SiteGround, and I just recently found out that I had unlimited WordPress sites. Now, the only limitation is kind of what the hold on, I'm blanking out what the CPU kind of usage is and things like that. And I actually had some problems, which was really what spurred the redesign for Frank's World, is that the theme I was using was burning up a lot of cycles. So that's why you would see it go off a lot. So this site is next on the list of things to kind of work on, but it's basically going to be kind of like a site, even though so kind of just using the domain and kind of Frank Diggs data and kind of being like an online resume is really what it's going to be. I don't foresee this as of today being a major blog or destination site, which is why it's kind of been sidelined in favor of kind of building out, maintaining Frank's World. And you'll see I finally got the new logo, and also working on Impact Quantum, that website, which 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 posts that I've done that. Ooh, look at this. Let me open that link up. Can I do that from here? Add block. No, I don't want to do that. All right. Well, I can't click on that now, but I do foresee. Thank you for that. I'll post that later. Well, actually, you've already posted in the comments, so it'll be available on LinkedIn. So thank you for that, Alberto. No, I'm real excited about some of the potential for Koverse, even though Koverse is not strictly a quantum computing type platform, but I'm still very passionate about quantum computing, and I'm very excited about what Koverse is doing in that space. So hopefully hopefully I have more to say about that in the future. But I'm also very excited to kind of show off some of the goodness that is kind of what you're going to see here. So yeah, so Andy and I kind of brainstormed while I was on a bit of a sabbatical, if you will, and basically kind of like, well, what's been a major blocker for content production? That goes for Data Driven too. Data Driven actually has a blog as well. And so what's been a major blocker? And it turns out the major blocker is kind of was really the tools that I built, as cool as I thought they were. I'm trying to pull out the all right, well, it looks like I won't be able to do a Dingo demo. Dingo demo. Say that 10 times fast. That's interesting. Why do I have a notification saying that I have to get my kid from school when I already got him? Curious. But yes, indeed, this is a new toy. I am really excited about this. I will definitely check out that link. Quantum computing is going to supercharge artificial intelligence. I totally agree. I think that the challenge is right now is that there's just so much happening in this space that I didn't want to clog up the main part of the site with just quantum stuff. And I really wanted to specialize and niche down. It was the same argument for creating the second podcast in the first place. So ultimately, I decided to kind of just spin up a second site. And this live stream, this content here, I'll probably launch this as the audio of this for podcast for Impact Quantum. So if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcasting platform of choice, thank you for listening. And definitely you're going to watch this space for a lot more activity and a lot of interesting things. I am super excited, as we would say at Microsoft. But I heartily encourage you to listen to this interview or watch this interview. If you go to impactquantum.com, you will. As of now, it's this one here. I will see if I can paste this in the chat. Let's see. Now we'll work on some platforms. I think LinkedIn being one of them. What does it say? Looks like it wasn't able to post to Periscope. Interesting. But those comments will be there, and if you're watching on Twitch, it'll be there. But this is a great video interview, and I was very jazzed after watching it, seeing kind of what the future holds for quantum computing, and now, and this is really the key. This is what inspired me to get into this space. Now is the time to prepare for this, because the revolution is happening, and it's best to get ready now. The best time to start training is today, not the day of the fight, so to speak, or when this becomes mainstream. And who knows, maybe when a recruiter calls and asks if you have 10 years of Q sharp experience, you can say, in fact, I do. Uh, but definitely check this out. I plan to funnel most of the stuff there. If you want to learn more about, actually, I wasn't sharing my screen. If you want to learn more kind of why I think, and I think this will resonate with what Alberto kind of posted, was how this is going to impact artificial intelligence. I think that there's definitely a, if you click here, right now it's the lead story. I'm going to convert this to a slider. But basically, if you go here, this is kind of my take on this, and why this is going on here. How do you prepare? That is a great question. I would say for me, I'll tell you what I'm doing, and is reading up as much as I can about kind of quantum algorithms. And sometimes, I mean, let's be honest, like the algorithm kind of discussions and things like that are, I don't know, I remember these in college, and they were kind of dry. I mean, there's no way to put it. They are very dry, right? How this algorithm works, or how this works. They can be very dry. I'm not saying they're always very dry. I think the best bang for your buck in terms of preparation is linear algebra. Study linear algebra. Get familiar with it, because it doesn't work the way that most branches of mathematics work. And as it turns out that it happens to explain quantum phenomena with relative reliability. I know some people will say it's completely accurate, but what does accuracy mean in terms of a realm that is probability based? Although, as I say that out loud, accuracy can be measured in that space, but it's not as absolute. What's interesting is how this works. And there actually was a good audiobook I listened to, and I'll pull that up, maybe do a book review on it. Listened to it last summer, that explains the individual who managed to figure out, like, hey, regular mathematical models don't work on describing quantum phenomena. So quantum physics has nothing to do with quantum computing. But it turns out that linear algebra, and in terms of the order of operands and things like that, when you multiply and divide, is a very good, it matches very well. And if you kind of look at it, now what's very intriguing is linear algebra. Linear algebra does a great job, runs really well on GPUs, as it turns out. So it may be very much the case that quantum computing or quantum algorithms will run in a regular cadence in the near future, very near future, but just on conventional hardware. I think that's something that I don't think people have really kind of, smart people have figured it out. But I mean, people are like, wow, quantum supremacy, we got to get this real quantum computer. It's not as simple as that, and it may actually be more advantageous to get a quantum computer or quantum algorithms running on conventional hardware. One, you can start like today, and then two, the other advantage is it turns out that the way data can be piped into a CPU on a quantum CPU is not going to be as fast due to certain pesky laws of physics and things like that. There was actually a really good talk that was unfortunately behind the firewall with somebody from Microsoft Research, kind of scolding the field people for scolding the field people for overpromising on what quantum can do. I heard him out. I agree with 90% of what he said. I think that there's definitely there's a lot of hype around quantum computers, and some of the hype is warranted, some of the hype is not, right? Because sometimes hype is legit, sometimes it's just hype. So how do you explain quantum computing to a layperson? That is an awesome question, Alberto. I would say, this is how I do it. And it all depends on what that layperson is. Are they a business decision maker? Is it my mom? Is it, well, my grandmother is no longer with us, but I mean, how would I explain that? I'll start with that because I think that's the one I think most people challenge with. And there are definitely there are definitely executives, there are business decision makers that are about as tech savvy as my mom. Um, but I would say this is that every computer you've used up until now has worked on basically the flow of electricity, right? It's basically measuring, is something happening or something not. That's why you hear the term binary, right? Because the switch is on or the switch is off. Now, if you combine enough switches together, oh, third graders, I like that idea. Well, how about I give you my pitch, Alberto, and you could tell me, would this work for a third grader? My son actually in the fourth grade did a talk on quantum computers, or not a talk, but like his science project. So he had the whole thing. And because I was actually talking to him because I think I had just come back from the MLADS conference, and you're going to hear more about MLADS soon on the podcast. But I'd come back from the MLADS conference and had basically seen the light, as it were, about how quantum computing is the future, and was kind of explaining to him why I was excited about it. I think I was listening to an audiobook on quantum physics, and he's like, "Why are you listening to this?" And I kind of explained. And so he was kind of into the idea. So ultimately, when you have something that is like a switch, where it's either on or off, right? You can, more switches means more ability to represent things, increases allowance. I will tell him, he said that. He will definitely appreciate that. So ultimately, now the catch is with switches is that they're either on or they're off. The electricity is flowing or they're not. Now, if you get enough switches together, you can basically control an entire concert hall worth of that. And that's basically where the term bit becomes byte, and that becomes megabyte, which is millions, and then giga, that sort of thing. So the more switches, the more power. Now, what's interesting is instead of a traditional light switch that controls the electricity flows or does not, what if you replaced some of those with dimmers, right? Well, now instead of dealing with, 1 or 0, now you're dealing with different sets of from 0 to 100, let's say. Each one of those switches or dimmer switches could represent a lot more potential types of interactions or potential states, which is a fancy way of saying that you can represent a lot more things more expressly in quantum computers. Now, there is a catch, right? You can't measure, right? If you have a dimmer switch on like halfway up or 2/3 of the way up or anywhere, right? It's either on or off. Yes, that is true. But is it on full power? Is it on half power, third power, whatever? So it turns out that you can't measure electricity. You can't use electricity to measure that kind of intermediate state. You have to measure something else. And in that case, happens to be kind of the state of quantum particles, which is a fancy way of saying stuff that's smaller than an atom, right? So subatomic type stuff. And that's where things get really kind of, oops. Hey, Joel, drop me on the live stream. Meet me on the live stream, dude. But so ultimately, what you have to measure is something that has a quantum state, and many books have been written about it. But ultimately, it comes down to studying probability. And a quantum computer will never give you a definite answer, but it will give you kind of probabilities of answer. So I really do need to work on the latter part of that because I think I might have lost a third grader. There is actually a really good video on YouTube, and it's a quantum researcher explaining quantum computing to different levels of persons. So the first one being kindergartner, and all the way up to a grad student, all the way up to actually another quantum computing researcher. And I think she does a good job of explaining it in different terms. But there's certainly a lot to be uncovered in this space, and the whole notion that it's not deterministic. Um, oh, good, good. I'm glad that worked. I do need to work on that kind of explanation, but there was actually a really cool animation where they talked about, like, if you had two dimmer switches, you can have X number of possibilities of kind of representing numbers, whereas you would need maybe about 8 or 16 kind of traditional switches. Um, the animation, I think, does a better job of explaining it than not. But the whole idea of this uncertainty of you're not sure quite, another aspect of it here, and thank you, Abacha, for the questions, is the idea that you have a state that's not one or zero. It is effectively kind of, you have infinite states, or it actually will collapse into one or zero. But until it does, it can be in any one of those. And it really becomes a game of probability. So that's kind of, I think, a good place to end. Because one of the things I've discovered with learning quantum is it's a bit like, well, here's the analogy. At least for me, maybe I'm a simple-minded type guy, but there's kind of, when I'm thinking in kind of conventional computing, right? That's kind of like gasoline, right? But when I pick up a book on quantum or start doing research on quantum stuff, I feel like I have to take out the engine, right? Plunk that over there, and then plunk in a diesel engine. So now I have to function on diesel. So that's kind of, it's just two different thought processes. Now I imagine at some point I'll get much better at the context switching, but it's kind of like, well, I mean, it's kind of like if you were a software engineer, right? If you were dealing with relational databases and relational data stores, and then you had to map that to kind of an object-oriented type structure, those are two different ways of thinking. And for a long time, it took me, it was very difficult to do that context switching. Now, over time and experience, I've managed to get pretty good at context and switching between those two worlds. I'm not quite there on the quantum space, though, in terms of being able to context switch like that. But growth mindset, growth mindset. Speaking of growth mindset, I want to highlight something that I am super proud of. If you follow me on Instagram, which is Frank Digs Data, you'll see every day. I am now at 323 consecutive days of tuning in to Pluralsight. So I'm very proud of that. I mean, maybe I'm shooting for 365. I'm actually shooting for 400 days. That way I can guarantee I'll get to 365. But every day is a little bit different. Interesting. Your explanation is historical linear algebra. Interesting. How do you mean by that? As I see you put your explanation is a historical. I think I know what you meant like that. And linear algebra is also known as matrix math. I've heard that used, matrix multiplication. That is actually pretty hard. But what's fascinating about linear algebra is that I didn't know this, is that there are a lot of academic fields that rely on linear algebra, like econometrics. When I spoke, my last user group that I spoke to in person was in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And it turns out one of the persons there who organizes it, which if you're watching, we need to get you on the show. He actually has a degree in econometrics, which is based heavily, apparently very heavily, on linear algebra. So when you look at kind of I told him, I was like, he's like, quantum's hard. And we were talking about this, like, but you are better suited towards being ready for that quantum algorithm world than the average person on the street. So it's kind of like, I'll use an analogy here, is that when I have 2 kids, and noticed that the pediatrician that we've been seeing for a number of years, she was pregnant, and it's like, well, you're kind of well prepared for this. And she's like, well, because no one's ever really prepared to be a parent. So who knows? And I was like, yeah, but you're better skilled than the average person off the street because of your medical training. You know, so I mean, it's kind of like in that sense, you know, that's kind of where I was going with that. I need to work on that out. I need to work on that analogy as well. But I have to jet pretty soon, and as I want to make sure I have a fresh cup of coffee before I have a work meeting. But I just want to thank you, particularly you, Alberto, for tuning in. Be sure to go over to impactquantum.com. Um, um, oh, I see what you mean. Okay. Right. No, I like that because I mean you need to understand both. Obviously, linear algebra, explaining linear algebra to a third grader is I don't know if you can explain. I want to know what schools if the third grader gets it. I want to know what school system that third grader goes to. Um, but but thank you for that, and thanks for watching. And you know, actually, if you're interested in the idea, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm thinking about adding because Frank's World is well, Frank. Impact Quantum. I'm toying with the idea of allowing guest contributors. So if you're interested in that, I've done guest contributions on Frank's World, but I kind of tightly control that. But I'm thinking about, you know, since it's WordPress, I can create a whole other ID. So hit me up on LinkedIn, Alberto. And if you're interested in writing for Impact Quantum, let me know. I don't make any money off it yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. I'm also thinking about a virtual quantum computing conference. If you're interested in that, if anyone's interested in that, let me know. And have a couple of guests lined up, thanks to a contact I made some time ago, actually. So we'll talk more about that in a future episode, in a future live stream. And as always, the door is open to anyone from IBM, Google, Microsoft, if you wish to come on the show and talk quantum computing, or anyone really. I think it's a fascinating field. There are few experts. So it's definitely a good growth trajectory in your career. The math is a little scary, I will say that. But you know what? Climbing a mountain can be scary too. But the views up top are quite spectacular. That's my attempt at an inspirational quote. Hashtag Thursday Thoughts. So my name is Frank Lavinia. Thanks for watching. Thanks for everyone who asked questions, particularly you, Alberto. Definitely looking forward to see you on the show. Hit me up on LinkedIn if you're interested in doing a kind of guest posting and things like that. Definitely looking to grow kind of the brand Impact Quantum in this space and do a lot more. So with that, I will roll some fancy graphics because I am super proud of my After Effects skills and things like that. I clicked the wrong button. All right, so here is the view from space.